In JavaScript, just like many other programming languages, object is very important. In fact, object-oriented programming is the most popular programming paradigm that we have. So in JavaScript, to create an object, we would normally do like this. Let's say, let's create a car object equals make, let's add Toyota, make and model. So we have make, we have a model. Now we have created a car object with two properties. But what happens when we need another car object that is going to have a make and a model? And probably when we create a method inside our car object, the other car might also need to use that method. So what do? We are going to need to create multiple different car objects, and we are going to be repeating make model inside every single one of them. And this is not a very good idea. So to solve the problem in JavaScript, we come up with constructor functions. Now, it is one function from which we can now create as many objects as possible. All right. So welcome to this video, and please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. So let's go ahead and clear out this function. Right, let's clear it out. So after clearing it out, we will create our first constructor function. Function car. And inside the parentheses, we have make and model. Now inside it, we'll come and say this dot make equals make. And this dot model equals model. So this is just a function with some features that kind of make it different from your regular function in JavaScript. So the very first difference you will observe is the fact that we write the name of the function starting with an uppercase. And also we have something called this. Okay, this keyword called this. And I'll explain what they mean in a bit. But right now, let's just focus on creating our objects. So with this function, constructor function named car, right? With this constructor function named car, we can now go ahead and create multiple cars with different models and different make using the new keyword. Okay, so we are going to create different cars, but they're going to follow the blueprints of this car function we have up here. And now to do that, we are going to use a keyword called new. So now let's go ahead and create our car objects. Right, so we say let car one because we're going to be creating multiple objects. Now let's do new car. So in front of it, we're going to have, let's put our Toyota Corolla again. And for the make, because the make comes first, so we put the make first. And the model comes next, and we add the model Corolla. So let's also create another car. It's car 2 equals new car. And inside the new car, let's say Honda code, or let's use a code, right? So when we go ahead now and console.log car 1 and car 2, what do we get? Car 1 and car 2. So let's save come down here and run the code, and we say node, what's the name of the file? Constructor. And running our code, we get this car, make, Toyota, and model Corolla. We get another car, make is Honda, and the model is Accord. Okay, so you see we can now create as many objects as we want. We are just creating 2 here for this lesson, but you can create even a million objects based on this single function prototype. So you won't need to be adding model to each one of them, but you simply know where you should add it here. Like the first property here is the make, and you add make first, and the second is model, and you add the model. So now let me explain what is going on here. Now we've created a function, right? Our constructor function called car. But to differentiate it from a regular function, we started the name with an uppercase. Now a kind of way to let you know that the new keyword should be used on it. Okay. Now that new keyword, on the other hand, is what turns this regular function into a constructor. So when we use the new keyword down here, we create an empty object based on this car constructor here. Okay, this new keyword is what makes this car a constructor. But when we now say let car equals new car, we are creating this car one, let car one rather. We are creating this car one as a new object based on this constructor. In other words, using the new keyword turns this car function into a constructor. And that turns it into a blueprint. Rather, it turns the car function into a blueprint for creating car objects. Okay. Now, in other programming languages, object-oriented programming is class-based, meaning objects are created based on classes, right? But in JavaScript, we have classes starting with ES6. And before ES6, JavaScript has been around, and we need to write object-oriented code. And the only way that was possible was the use of constructor functions. So we can also add method to this constructor. And let's go here inside our constructor and add a method to get review. Okay. So we'll say these dots, what should we name our review? Let's say this dot get review equals function, and we're just going to use an anonymous function. Okay, that's a function without a name. And inside it will say return, what should we return? Let's just make a review about the car. So we say return, inside the return we say this dot make, and outside here the same thing, this dot model is a great car. Right, so we've written our review on it. This dot make, this dot model is a great car. So let's save and come out here. Now when we do something like this, let's copy and paste. And inside here we are going to say dot get review, and down here we're also going to add dot get review to car2. And now they are methods, so let's invoke them, save, and when we run the code, what do we get? We get Toyota Corolla is a great car, Honda Accord is a great car. Okay, now everything works perfectly. And as I said, the reason behind everything working is the new keyword right here. Okay, and you see immediately we added the get review method. It is added to those objects. Now everything works well because of the new keyword here. Without the new keyword, this car1 and car2 would just be functions that return nothing, because there is no, okay, that returns here. They will just be keywords that return nothing, because the main function car here does not return anything inside it. Okay. Now the next thing we need to talk about is prototype. And once again, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. It means a lot to me. Now let's say you want to add one more property to the constructor function. Okay, we cannot just do it here like coming down here and say probably car dot color. Okay, we can't just do car dot color equals red or something. Okay, we can't just do something like that. But what do we need to do for it to work? We'll say car1 dot color equals red. Right? Car1 dot color equals red. Now when we console.log car dot color, let me copy these two once again. Okay, I think I copied them already. Control V. So now let's say car1 dot color, right? Dot color also. So let's save. So we get red for color 1 and we get undefined for color 2, right? Not an error message, no, but undefined. So what happens is that even though car1 and car2 are instances of the same constructor functions, and when I say instances, that means both of them are objects created based on the same prototype, right? So even though they are instances of the same constructor function, color here was defined for only car1, not car2. So what we get red for car1, but for car2, JavaScript knows that color is available somewhere. Okay, in fact, in VS Code, I think when we add the dots notation, let's check the properties. You can see color here. Okay, you can see color. You can see all the properties and methods available to it, and you get color also. So it knows that color is available somewhere, but it is not defined for car2. So JavaScript simply returns undefined. So if a property is in our constructor that does not have a value, we get undefined for it. So because the color is still present somewhere for one of the instances of our constructor function, JavaScript knows that it is there, but it is not defined for car2. So we simply get an undefined, not an error message. So the solution to this problem is quite simple, but to know how to use it and how it works, we really need to understand a bit more how this function here, this car constructor function, how it works. So you see, in JavaScript, all objects inherit properties. Okay, in JavaScript, we have data types, primitives, and for primitives, you have numbers, string, null, big int, boolean, and the rest of them. And besides this, we have reference types that are also called objects. As a matter of fact, in JavaScript, if something is not a primitive, it is an object. I've been saying this and saying this for long. If it's not a primitive, it is object. Don't think far beyond that. So for instance, an array is a JavaScript object. So it has properties and methods available to it. That is why we are able to have array methods and stuff like that. And I have a video on array methods which you can check later. I'll drop a link in the description below. So our car constructor right here also, our car constructor also inherits from the car.prototype the same way the arrays we create in our code inherit from array.prototype available in JavaScript. So our car constructor inherits from car.prototype. Now, then at the top level of all this, we have the JavaScript object prototype. So in the case of this car now represents that object. Okay, so in JavaScript, for instance, we say we have object dot prototype. Now, when we created this car constructor function, what happens is, for in this scenario, we now have car dot prototype. Okay, so for even objects that are built into JavaScript, like array that I mentioned earlier, you will also have array dot prototype. But at the top level of array dot prototype and our own car dot prototype, you have the JavaScript's very own object dot prototype. Okay, so now to add a new property to our method, we need to go through that prototype, because all these two functions we created, okay, using the new keyword, they get their properties under the hood from the prototype, not this physical car constructor we can see, but the prototype under the hood in JavaScript. Okay, and that is why when we say car1.color, it is available for only the car. Now, how about if we really need to add a property outside? We will need to do it on the car constructor itself, like this. But we will not simply go and say car.color. It won't work. So what we need to do now is to say car.prototype. Okay, prototype. Now with car.prototype, everything including the properties and methods inside our function here are changed to this prototype under the hood in JavaScript. So for us to add another property and another object to this constructor function, we need to chain it to the prototype. So now we can now add our color property to this prototype. So now we'll go ahead and say color. Okay, now let's remove car1's color here. Let's remove it, or let's just outrightly remove it. There's no need to keep it around. So now down here we'll say car.prototype.color equals gray. Let's use gray. And now what happens when we go ahead and now say, okay, let's copy our car1.color and car2.color right here and paste it down there. Save. And what do we get? We get gray for the boats. Okay, yeah, they're undefined here. Let's just cancel them. They're undefined. And the reason they bring undefined is related to something called hoisting. Okay, but I would explain that in a different videos on hoisting. I'm not going to explain it in this video. So it's due to a property called hoist, a feature of JavaScript called hoisting. The ability for something to be available before you define it. So even though we defined our color here as a property inside the car constructor, so even though we do it down here, calling console.log color up here does not give us an error. It gives us undefined for both. Then down here, after we define the property, we get gray. So I will explain all those in another video for hoisting. So you see that it works well. Now, another important use of prototype is actually for the creation of methods, right? Now, you see this method here. Even though we created just one getReview function method, you can call it method, you can call it function, but using them on objects, we call them methods. So even though we created just one getReview method inside our car constructor, outside here, calling the getReview method on car1 and car2, we now get two duplicates of the getReview method. And this is not very efficient. Okay, normally in our code we would want to have just one method that can be used anywhere in our code. And to achieve that, we can also use the constructor and the prototype to do that. So now let's go ahead and remove this method. So anytime you are using a function constructor, make sure to remove it from inside the constructor function and add it outside to the prototype. So now let's remove this, Control X, and let's remove this comma. So outside here, we're going to paste it. And what do we need to do? I think. So we're going to say car dot prototype dot get review. Okay, dot get review. And now doing this every single time we call this get review method, even though we call it for 1,000,000 objects, it is still going to be the same get review method called for every single one of them, not 1,000,000 duplicates for 1,000,000 objects. And this is an efficient code. So when we come out here and run our code, what do we get? So we still get Honda is a great car, Toyota Corolla. So for you to know it really works, let's change this to this a very nice car. A very nice car. Now we save, come down here and run the code. So we get Toyota Corolla is a very nice car, Honda is a very nice car. And not only does it work, but now it is even more efficient because it is now one method for all the objects. Even if we create up to 1,000,000 objects, we are not going to be getting duplicates, but just one function used for every single one of them. All right, guys, that's all for this video. And once again, if there are some things you don't understand in this video, you can rewatch it and make sure to grasp everything, and also try and practice. Remember to always practice. Thanks for watching, and please do like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.